a killer guest. We have Mark Carroll, who you personally have watched him grow over the years, and we're going to be learning about how he went from earning $50 an hour as a PT to becoming a multi-million-dollar PT in less than a decade. You've seen this growth, and you've known him for years, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, obviously, Mark was, I first met Mark in 2014, and he was a younger trainer back then. Knocking at the door at our original Clean Health Sydney CBD gym. Wanting to learn from us. He invested into our internships, our education programs. So he was super keen on obviously learning and developing. Then was knocking at the door in terms of wanting to work for us.
Yeah.
And at first he was telling me all these big and bold goals, and I'd seen this many times before, people proclaiming that they're going to do X, Y, Z, and I was like, yeah, okay, mate, sure you are. Look, if you go away and do X, Y, Z, come back to me in 3 months' time, and then we'll talk about working together.
Yeah.
3 months later, he'd done that, and I'm like, well, look, I'm going to keep my word, and he came on board to work for us as a trainer. And at first when he did that, he was on an extremely low rate, kind of working his way up through the ranks, which, look, I'm sure we'll get into today. So I think he's in the waiting room. Let's let him in and see how Mark's going.
What's up?
Hi, Mark.
Mate, you've got the lockdown beard going, brother.
I got hair, I got everything.
Mate, I was like that about a week and a bit ago, and I'm just like, you know what? I'm going to get my Lauren, not yours, to just cut my hair. So I think she did an all right job.
Looks better than mine.
It is definitely a
exactly.
look.
Exactly.
Well, Mark, it is a pleasure to have you on our podcast. We are kicking off season 2 and are excited to chat with you. Today we're going to be talking all about how you went from earning $50 an hour as a PT to becoming a
less. I think it's probably less.
40.
Yeah.
Less
I thought it was
$50.
40.
And turning into a multi-million-dollar PT all in less than a decade. But to kick off this episode, before diving deep into that, can you give our listeners and viewers a little bit more of background info about you? For example, talking a little bit more about how your career started first 10 years and how you got into lifting in the industry itself.
Yeah, sure. Basically, I guess I've been a trainer for 14 years now, or going on 15, I think. It's what I did straight from school, and it kind of took me a lot of different ways. The first few years, I wasn't exactly doing kind of what I'm doing now, that's for sure. I was doing more kind of generic kind of park fitness, group classes and things like that. It was never really
boxer size.
Yeah, so I was working in the city in the morning in the parks and stuff like that. My background, where I grew up, I went to a really small gym. It was like an RSL club. I don't know, obviously, if you're in Australia, you kind of know what that is. It's kind of a lot of old people go, and personal training wasn't really a thing there. So I never really was exposed to kind of like a big gym vibe, so it just never seemed like a reality for me. So I did that for a fair few years, and then it was only till I moved and started training at a proper gym. Finally, after years and years and years, I started working there, and it kind of got me into actual resistance training with clients and doing things like that. So it's been a strange process. It's definitely not been a linear way of growth, that's for sure. So it's just kind of those things where you just deviate, and now I'm kind of in a position where I'm doing things and working with people I was never really intending on doing, and I'm obviously working with a lot of women these days, and even 4 or 5 years ago I wasn't working with any, so it's quite an interesting kind of path, but it's just one of those things where you just kind of go with the flow, so to speak.
Talk to us about obviously your philosophy towards education, because that's something that anyone that engages and follows you on social media, they'll see that literally 99% of the stuff that you put out there is aimed to inform. Where has kind of that mindset coming from? Obviously I know you and your story, we go back many years. But to a lot of people today, I think they see the end product. They see the 300,000 followers, they see all this type of stuff now and they think it just fucking happened. Give us some insight into, how you made that happen.
Obviously, when you start out, I thought I had a foundational education knowledge just from reading bodybuilding magazines and stuff like that. But it's definitely been one of the things where the more you learn, the more you realize you don't know that much. I think it was back in around 2014, I think I really started to dive into my education. I started to learn about Charles Poliquin, and then that's what kind of got me into a lot of like the Poliquin group stuff and reading Charles's books and things like that. And that's where, funny enough, my brother introduced me to clean health. So Glenn, my brother, was the one who
I didn't realize it was Glenn.
Yeah, so he sent me the Clean Health website, the old one from the city, and it was all these transformations and whatnot. And I remember looking at all the profiles, and I remember, yourself, Dane, the Rawdons, and it was this like endless list of qualifications or courses done by signature, this. And it kind of was like this whole new world for me of, oh, okay, like you can be more than just walking around and telling a client to do burpees and running around and stuff like that. And so that kind of really opened my eyes to kind of the level people were at, so to speak. And that's when I think it was the first proper courses I did was the Clean Health course. Well, I think it was called. What was it called back?
It would have been the level 1, level 2 internship. I distinctly.
It was before PNC, I think.
I distinctly remember you in the snatch grip deadlift section of the course.
Yeah.
No, you did. I think remember you got up to like I think it was about 150. And for anyone that knows, like that's 10 sets of 5 reps with 150 kilos on a snatch grip deficit with tempo. Like might sound easy, but practically applying it's fucking hard. But to your credit, I remember like you were the one that was like you were fucked, you were injured, but you still finished the workout. And kind of, from my end, I really kind of saw that perseverance and it stood out, because I think, as I was saying to Marie beforehand, like, I remember in those days, you coming into the Clean Health gym and kind of, talking about what you were going to do in the industry. And, as you know now, like as someone who's senior, for me back then, it was like, oh, okay, yeah, sure, he's going to do that. But then you have, and not a lot of people talk the talk, but they don't fucking walk the walk. And I think it's a good lesson for like trainers out there. Now it's like again they see the wells and bristles, but they don't see the hard work that's gone into it.
Yeah, for sure. It was and so from that 2014, that's where I kind of really just dove into all the education, and so it's just been a kind of accumulating knowledge, taking this from that person, this from that kind of course, and you spend a fair few years kind of, really building up your own knowledge from other people. But then I think the last couple of years is where then I think when you have enough experience, you can start to then really form who you want to be as a coach as well. Because it's not about trying to be the next anyone else. Initially you try to be like everyone else, but then you realize, you've got your strengths, you've got weaknesses, you've got things that you enjoy. And so the last few years, I guess it's just been a natural evolution in, doing so many courses over the years. So I often get asked about like my methods and stuff and what I'm like, and I'll just say I'm a blend of, so many different things, so there's like, that's the power of education, you don't have to just be one way, so it's just definitely a pretty cool evolution the last 14 years of learning lots of things and kind of where I'm at, but always ongoing, trying to get better still.
Yeah. And, you started with your own education doing starting off with general population transformation, And you started, like you mentioned earlier, you solidified your niche to master female transformations, and you did it recently. You said 4 years, up until 4 years ago, you didn't really train females to this extent. Can you explain to us how and why you made that shift to find your current niche?
Yeah, it wasn't something too planned, that's for sure. I kind of just fell into it, just training um, a few women, a few for bikini comps and stuff like that. I was primarily, as you said, training your everyday kind of general population person who wanted really serious transformations, and that was great. I loved that. And then I kind of fell into training more advanced women. I just got one or two clients, and then that went really well. And then it was just the kind of the power of kind of training them, wanting to learn more. So that's why I really started to dive into the education. And to me, the foundations of getting good results of a woman, like an advanced woman or a general population client, it's still kind of the same framework. It's still the same science of understanding nutrition, the same intent of sticking to a plan and stuff like that. It was small details that just need to change, obviously things like exercise selection, things like that. So it wasn't anything too major shift. I think as a coach, once you kind of have a strong foundation of knowledge, I think it's pretty easy to get good results with a diverse population. And then in the last couple of years, it's just kind of just really built upon training a couple of people and then growing and growing and growing to training lots of women. And so it was just a kind of a natural flow on from being good at transformations to now being good at, I guess, just working with more advanced women. But to me, it's, as I said, it's kind of like if you have that base, you should be able to do pretty well with most people.
Yeah.
But I think where a lot of trainers probably get it wrong is they don't master the base.
Yes.
They try and overcomplicate things that get maybe too fancy too soon, or kind of, they want to get their black belt and they're still on a white belt and they just want to jump straight there without kind of going through the different gradings. I think a big part of the gradings, like, I look at your career and, it's been very much like, starting in the trenches, training clients in gyms,
Yeah.
doing those 40, 50, however many sessions a week before going into the online space. Like, how important do you think it is for trainers to get practical, real world experience actually as a coach, being hands-on? Obviously COVID has, especially in Oz, made this a bit hard, but do you think that's an important step that a lot of trainers miss today, in terms of like they just want to go from point A to point B without kind of, checking in the gym, so to speak?
Yeah, I'm not a huge lover of online training, which is funny because that's kind of what I do from a standpoint of passion. Like, there's something about working with someone in the gym and, actually doing all the little things, correcting them when they train and stuff like that. I just, as a coach, I think you learn so much more seeing someone face to face. So I think that's been a valuable tool. I did that for almost 12, 13 years as a coach full time. I only gravitated towards online just because of, really it was just the choice. Not a choice. It's just the market that I had was much more international, and obviously with a gym you're kind of limited to who's in that local area. But for me, I just think working with people face to face, it's just, that you can learn all you want, from reading, studies and courses, internships, but there's that experience, that actual experience that comes from face to face. Online coaching, a lot of it's really, being good with systems and things like that, but being a face-to-face coach, you definitely learn how to deal with people, much more the art of coaching. And so I think if I ever had, mentored coaches, something like that these days, I'd still always suggest spend a few years in the gym. Maybe build up online, but everyone wants to be an online coach. But I also think they miss out on probably the most enjoyable part of being a coach, which is actually training people face to face.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
an unbeatable personal experience that you get, and also knowledge, and it teaches you how to coach online. I myself am an in-person coach as well as online coaching. I do online coaching as well, and I think one of the things that teaches me more about being a good coach online is the time and the lessons I learn with each individual client in person. And I think that's one thing a lot of coaches tend to miss when they're diving straight onto online coaching, is how to actually coach itself. It's a lot more complicated, and you learn all those things when you are in person. But
And you
overall,
can
I
just
feel like, go
you
ahead.
build really good
Yeah.
relationships with people. You know, a lot of my clients I had for years and years and years. It's hard to build that same relationship online. You know, so um, there's pros and cons, I think, but I think online you can work with a lot of people and people all over
Yeah.
the world, which is great. But that face to face, I think, you know, especially what if you see my content on social media, I really love things like cueing and exercise, execution, stuff like that. That's the stuff you can get really good on in person. It's hard to get really good at that online. That's for sure.
And given the shift in the industry itself in the last 2 years and how you've pivoted into the digital space in general, how has your mission and passion changed around that shift going fully online?
Um, it's I guess it's just kind of the way of the world these days, you know, with online. Uh, Luckily for myself, and I also know Dane, Clean Health, you know, we both shifted to online and at the right time pre-COVID.
Well, we you know we did it together, mate. Pretty much, you
Yeah,
know, like
so I think we were both very fortunate that we kind of shifted just before everything happened with the COVID and everything like that. But I think, you know, we just both of us kind of seen the way of the world, you know, and it's like the world's a small place these days. So you can with the internet, with social media, you have access to a lot of people, and so if you want to really work with people en masse, you don't really have much choice. You know, for me, my last challenge, I got almost 4,000 people. Most people, as a face-to-face trainer, wouldn't train 4,000 people in a 20
in a
year
career.
career.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
and
it's
I think that's definitely a thing you were talking before about kind of international reach. Like,
Yeah.
you know, inevitably, like, you know, if you're out there coaching people, trying to improve health and get them results, etc., like you're limited via your local gym. I think online has allowed people like yourself or Clean Health and you know, to be able to really kind of get that mission out to everyone.
Yeah.
You know, and I think just even though there's like you know, a lot more coaches in the industry today and there's a lot more stuff online, there still is, I think, a shortcoming of people that are providing high quality
Yeah.
information that is, you know, safe, effective, but then also practical. I think a lot of people either provide practical information that is not safe, or people can provide, you know, evidence-based information that's not practical. I think, you know, and probably you can answer this better. Do you feel that's been part or was attributed to your success in that you've been able to blend, you know, stuff that is proven to work and has got the evidence behind it, but also is practical for the average person to actually understand?
Yeah, it kind of depends on what your market is. I try to I try to kind of hit, yeah, the majority of people, but the upper end still people who want to learn. I guess a lot of I'm not going to get your Weight Watchers market, which doesn't
Yeah.
really necessarily want to learn too much, and they just want to be given a generic meal plan and told you can't eat this, you can't eat that. I still try to obviously push education, but I try to push education in a manner that is relatable to my broader audience, but it's still enough that I find I'll probably never have millions of followers because it still requires people to want to learn, which a lot of people don't. So it's kind of finding a blend for me of education, which I think is going to help people and make them better, but also not overcomplicating it, not making it too dry and stuff like that. I think, especially on social media, it's you don't have people's attention span for a long time, so you can't go too crazy in depth. It's not a course, so that's where I kind of save a bit more of my in-depth stuff for my programs and stuff like that. People who actually want to invest their money into it, but education-wise, I think simplicity goes a long way. You can't dumb it down too much because people will just go, yeah. But you want to kind of help. The way I kind of like to say is, you want to kind of be the answers to people's problems or the answers to questions people have often had, and so they have that that's it, that makes sense, I get why I wasn't feeling that before, I get why I wasn't getting results before. So clear cut, kind of simple educational content, I think, goes a long way for most coaches. But I think a lot of people try to be like a Lane Norton or something like that and overcomplicate it, and not read the room of who the actual audience is. So you need to be smart with kind of what you're putting out. Otherwise, it's quite hard to put education out if people aren't listening or don't want to listen. So you need to put enough out that you build an audience of that.
Yeah, and on that topic for education, obviously, with this show, a lot of the people listening are, trainers or people within the industry. Like, for the trainers out there that are listening, like, from a technical standpoint, so when it comes to nutrition and training, like, what are 2 or 3 things that you think most trainers are generally not doing that are stopping them from getting transformations with their clients? Because obviously, with your background, it's been all about client comes in out of shape, overweight, and then at the end of 12, 24 weeks, they're in shape. What do you feel that you've done that maybe a lot of trainers aren't doing that are stopping them from doing what you've done?
In general, as in working with a client? Or just
whether it's kind of how you're prescribing your nutrition, your training, your approach to setting them up for a kind of transformation. Like, what are some of the key kind of top tips that you could give fit pros out there, around kind of the Mark Carroll method?
Yeah, well, the way I've always kind of looked at working with people, I have a time frame of working with people. So you kind of want to set goals for, all right, what's achievable in 8, 12, 24 weeks. I feel like a lot of trainers do, all right, let's sign them up for a 5-pack of sessions, and then a 5-pack of sessions, and they're just happy to have the client. The goal is to retain the client for as many sessions as possible. How many sessions can I keep this client coming back and paying me money? Whereas the goal to me should be, you're not signing up for a pack of sessions, you're signing up for a clear-cut goal. So that's the way I kind of look at coaching is, okay, you've signed up with me for a reason. What is your most specific, down to the exact point goal? And then we kind of take it from there. And obviously a lot of people come to me too because they want to look better, be stronger, whatever. So I think that initial consult, it's really setting goals, but really being specific what you want to do. And I don't think a lot of coaches really do that. As I said, they're just happy to have a client. They're just happy having someone pay them money, and they focus on, oh shit, what can I do to keep this client coming back, instead of, oh shit, what can I do to get this person the most epic result possible. And the way I kind of look at it is everything needs to be in synergy with that goal, the training, the nutrition. It's not, I know a lot of people kind of do the lowest hanging fruit kind of method, like let's just start with this step first, and let's start with, in 2-3 months, let's start with that step. And I don't feel like a lot of people ever get that much momentum, and when you don't get momentum, you start to doubt yourself as a client, and you doubt your trainer, and then you give up. So for me, I like to tackle all variables, training, nutrition, lifestyle, stress. If you get those things right from the start, all of a sudden you get a lot of momentum, and then the client leads to buying into you and buying into that they can actually do big things. So for me, it's really looking at getting a person momentum, doing the little things well from the start, and that really sets a tone for those weeks. And then, as I really like having that goal, that end goal, it might be, lose 10 kilos, it might be whatever it is. It's just you're trying to hold yourself, the client, and yourself accountable to those goals, and constantly reflecting on those goals. Are we working towards it? I think a lot of people just kind of hope for the best and just be like, well, we'll see where we end up. And for me, it's not a comp prep with general population clients or anything like that, but I like the way that with like a comp prep, you have a set date when they want to be there. You've got a specific date. It might be on a 10 levels back scale working with a general population client, but still having goals, having a plan, periodizing your programs, and just having a really strategic plan of how to take a client from point A to point B, and then relaying that message back to the client, I think is really important. So they're not just turning up and thinking, I'm here, I'm happy I got here from work, I'm just, I'm going to come twice a week and that's it. It's really turning up with a purpose.
Yeah, and I can agree to that. And I've taken almost all of the courses from Clean Health from the beginning of my own coaching and fitness journey. And I feel like the minute that I was able to implement, especially like the nutrition courses, I was able to really catapult client progress, because you can't just, have them come into exercise. There are clients that are like that. And at the very beginning, that's how I was. But I felt like there needed to be some sort of push to my passion, and it was to give more progress and actually see change, not just coming in and keeping those clients because they haven't changed. I think education touches base on what you're saying, is being educated, so you're actually teaching these clients, even if they don't want to absorb it and they just are focused on the results, you're still using those fundamental lessons and education to propel them forward to reach their goals.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of people do want really big things.
Yeah.
But I think they kind of undersell themselves, and a lot of coaches just like run with that. So I don't think a lot of people quite understand what they're capable of, or they think it's going to be this really drastic thing. Like a lot of my best results over the years with like non-comp people were only training a couple of days a week. It's what happens if you can get the training, the nutrition right. And it's nothing too magical, is what I kind of like to put out to people. It's just doing the basics well, consistency. You don't need to live in the gym. You don't need to be dieting on low calories year round and stuff like that to get really good results. And so I think people think it's all or nothing, but there's a middle ground. And once you start to realize that as a coach, and can relay that information back to your client, I think everyone kind of ends up a lot happier and gets much better results.
Yeah.
For a standard, fat loss clients, like what type of, because I mean obviously you've worked with thousands now from around the world, like what type of norms do you like to see for that initial 12 weeks? Like if they're a male or a female, is there a difference? Because you spoke before about a lot of trainers aren't, they don't understand, or the clients, the actual type of results somebody can get. Like what do you think is like a standard norm that you see for people that are kind of coming through your programs?
I think obviously I get such a broad range of people these days. But I normally shoot for let's go a minimum goal. So that'd be around half a kilo a week or something like that for a fat loss goal for someone. So it's just setting there's nothing. If you look at trying to lose half a kilo a week, that's over the course of 12 weeks, 6 kilos or so. It doesn't sound like a lot, but it's actually going to be really noticeable if you actually lose close to 6 kilos of fat mass, maintain your muscle mass, get stronger, sleep better, feel better. And so it's actually going to be a pretty big win. So often my normal starting point is starting at the minimum of kind of like half kilo a week. And then obviously you get other cases where you can go a lot higher, high level, but first level is normally just let's start with the basics. Let's hit that first. Whilst my big thing is though, whilst also trying to hit strength PBs throughout those 12 weeks. So that's my big thing is these days it's very much about using resistance training to just get as strong as possible, attack nutrition for the fat loss. So you're kind of doing the best of both worlds. So they're not coming to the gym to lose weight, so to speak. They come to the gym to get stronger, build muscle. And if you can take care of that stuff outside the nutrition standpoint, I think you're going to be able to really just get at minimum, a really good base level result for someone.
Yeah. But I think even to your point, 6 kilos, or what's that in pounds, 13, 14 pounds.
Yeah.
That type of result for most people, if they're coming in at 90 kilos and they're, a bloke and dropping down to 84, or 70 kilos and down to 64, it's a fairly significant percentage of their overall body weight, firstly. But then all the other benefits, like the sleep, they're going to come out of that 12 weeks actually feeling better, like the mental health aspects and benefits to that as well are massive. I think a lot of people get caught up in seeing before and afters and think it's just all about the outside, what they see, but they don't actually really try and quantify internally what that does for the person, how they feel. Do you see that with a lot of your clients?
The hard thing is though, people often want those before and afters, really drastic before and afters, and what they don't realize is sometimes the after you don't actually feel much better. You can actually feel pretty average.
Yeah.
So it's kind of putting that dialogue at, I get a lot of women who say, I want to look, I get a lot of 50-year-old, late 40-year-old women, and they show me a photo of a pro bikini girl who's 20-odd, and they say, I want to look like that. How long? And it's kind of holding expectations of, after 12 weeks I've lost 6 kilos, but I don't have the muscle mass. Why don't I look like this girl who's been lifting for 10 years? So that's the thing where you need to kind of control kind of expectations, so focus on, what's the number one objective? Obviously there's a difference between looking your best and necessarily looking like you've changed and also feeling your best. So that's sometimes a hard thing to try to have that dialogue with clients, because there's sometimes two quite different things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it really is no doubt that, in my opinion and in many others, that you're one of the most influential coaches in the industry right now. And you've just hit 300,000 followers. Congratulations. And you have one of the most engaging audiences. Do you mind giving our listeners who are, a lot of our listeners are PTs, how do you manage to keep your audience so engaged and continuing that growth?
It certainly doesn't always feel engaged, that's for sure. Sometimes these days with social media, education is not the most the engaging thing, sadly, unless it seems like you need to be dancing or something these days on Instagram and a TikTok style thing. But it's a strange one, social media these days. But I think it's just putting out, as I said, it's just the hardest thing is putting out consistent content which is actually designed to better people. It's not just taking a photo of a motivational quote or something like that. It's trying to actually look at what your audience needs, look at what your audience is asking. That's why I like to do a lot of Q&As and stuff like that, so you can really get a read of what your audience wants. The hard thing is with social media, you're constantly getting new followers, and then you have followers you've had for years. So it's kind of trying to keep the new followers be kind of driving in your key educational foundation to your new followers, whilst also keeping your old followers engaged, which is not always the easiest thing, trying to get the best of both worlds. But it's just, as hard as it is, it's just consistent content. It's consistently really trying to deliver, So I think a lot of people go wrong on social media as coaches because they hold back too much content. These days, you really need to give away so much, like a couple of years ago, like a lot of the stuff I post is stuff, I've learned private internships paying thousands of dollars, or courses paying thousands of dollars, and then here you are giving it away for free on an Instagram post, which most people won't even recognize how long it took you to learn these things. But that's just the power of the game, The more you give away, I think the more you get back in life, but also social media. So that's kind of the hard thing. So it's consistency. It's trying to be up to date with education, and then just also putting it out in a way that's also engaging, which is also the hard thing. So it's definitely not the easiest thing in the world, social media. Especially when you're not a bikini model or a guy with shredded abs or something like that.
I think you made a point earlier about kind of, all of the stuff that you've done towards your education. And I've always said, like, for a trainer, first 10 years of your industry really, or your career, should all be about, the education you're doing. It shouldn't really be about sales and marketing and all that. It should literally be about becoming the best trainer that you could be. That's what I did. That's what you did. And then kind of year 10 onwards, it was more going into business. Like, what is your recommendation? Because obviously you're able to put out all of this engaging content because you've studied it for so long. And even now, if we look at like a lot of the stuff that you do now is on business and stuff like that, in terms of a lot of the study and books that you read. So you're still studying, you're just doing it in a different genre. Like, what is your advice on kind of like, for a young trainer right now, how much time should they be allocating per week to their education? What should they be focusing on? Maybe even like what percentage of their income should they be putting into their education? Obviously, I know you've put a lot in. Maria has, even at a young age, done a lot of education herself. I did, like, from your standpoint, what would you recommend?
First of all, with just education in general, kind of where to start. It's just getting that foundational knowledge. I think everyone these days, you see like 19-year-old coaches never trained anyone, fighting over like the hypertrophy mechanisms and stuff like that, and all these advanced things, and like it's like what, and yet you're struggling to get 5 clients at your local gym. It's like I think people trying to they see so much content from guys who are 40, 50 years old, really advanced guys, and they don't recognize that that's not where they're at right now. And
we had earlier on today, because we're shooting all the episodes for season 2, Paul Carter. Yeah. And obviously, I've known Paul for years, and you have too. Like, he's been doing this for 30 years. So like the information that he was actually talking about mechanical tension today. So his level of knowledge in areas like that is going to be far beyond these 19-year-olds that you mentioned.
Yeah. So being exactly right, and so starting out, people want to be, seen as like this sexy, fancy, coach, and that's not really what gets you people initially. It's like, so I think as a coach, you really want to start with the foundation of understanding how to cue movements, understanding how the body works, so basic like anatomy, biomechanics of how to actually train someone and how to load their muscles correctly. You want to have a foundation of nutrition, so you can, again, you don't need to prep them to get on stage, but you need to actually have them be able to understand things like fat loss, macros, things like how to build muscle, protein, just really basic stuff. And if you can do that, honestly, you'll be head and shoulders above 95% of coaches out there who just have no clue on everything. So we can start with the basics and then combine that with experience doing. I don't think you need to overdo education. I think it's quite important to also do a couple courses and then go spend some time actually putting that in place.
Yeah.
There's kind of that information overload, which I've done previously as well, where you learn something, but then if you don't have a chance to apply it, is it really knowledge learned? Not really. So I think the best things I did was when I kind of did a course, a couple courses, and then I spent 6, 7, 8 months applying that, seeing how it worked, seeing and developing those skills. So as a coach, I think it's important just getting foundational knowledge. In terms of courses and stuff like that, I think if you can try to do 3, 4 courses a year, that's going to go a long way. Price point, it depends. I think we've probably all done courses which cost a lot, might have not been that good. We've done a course that was a bit cheaper, and there's been ROI was 100 times. So it's hard to say kind of on price point. But I think it's more so just being actively engaged and trying to upskill. Being able to read. I don't think young coaches understand how lucky they are these days to have social media. The amount of incredible content people are putting out, stuff that you would have to pay thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars for, is literally for free every day by coaches competing with each other to get your business. Like, the amount of content is just so much better than you could ever imagine.
It's even in the last 2 years. I think
it's just built up,
it's just built up.
I can attest to that too. Being a very young coach, I started off being the youngest by a lot, starting off in my gym. And I think one of the things, and for any listeners who are young coaches in the industry, looking at people who have over a decade of experience, experience takes that time. But I think applying an investment in yourself with the return of investment is education. Learning the basics and fundamentals, applying those fundamentals, and the time will continue to pass. But you just really need to commit to, I'm doing this for, this is my purpose, this is my passion. It's not going to be easy at the beginning, but if you're committed to continuously learning and bettering yourself as a coach, that success will also come, and you'll be that next generation's decade-long coach that knows everything, that is really, really successful, and use them as an example. You just have to kind of stay true to that and really dig deep into sticking to the fundamentals of education constantly.
And I think on that one, and Mark could attest to it, success leaves clues.
Yes.
like if I look at, Mark was talking earlier about Charles Poliquin. Obviously he was a massive mentor of mine. Paul Carter was a massive, look at people that have been where you want to be and have not just done it once or twice, but done it 3, 4, 5 times, because they're the ones that obviously have the staying power, both as coaches, and putting information out there that are going to be the good ones to model yourselves over. And then, over time, as Mark said, what's the Bruce Lee principle? Take a bit from here and here and then make up your own method.
Yeah.
That's the natural kind of progression and transition for anyone and everyone.
Yeah, and I think the hard thing with education is it's pretty humbling, because often you'll think, I'm finally on top of a topic, and then you learn that actually maybe that wasn't quite true, or maybe that wasn't quite right, and then you need to kind of unlearn things, or you need to keep a fair bit of that stuff, but then also get rid of some of those things. That's the power of education. And every time you kind of think you're on top of something, then you realize, I could probably be doing this a little bit better. So it's even a lot of the stuff I do, 5 years ago, I don't do now. Even stuff I do 6-9 months ago, I've changed things. So it's a constant, if you really want to learn, it's a constant evolution of, learning, unlearning, increasing your knowledge on topics, things like that. And then as a coach, I think as a young coach as well, I was talking to someone about this recently, I can't remember, but too often I think young coaches try to get too niche, where they try to be an expert at 20, 21 on something like that. And I think that can also leave you with not too many options. So my kind of thing is just try to get good at the basics and a broad spectrum. You don't need to be Sebastian Orr, world elite strength coach at 21. You don't need to be Brett Contreras, the glute guy at 21. You just need to be a good coach at a lot of those things. Like all those great coaches, Sebastian, Brett Contreras and stuff like that, they weren't what they are now. Initially they got good at a lot of things, and I think too often people try to pigeonhole themselves and then miss out on learning on a lot of different topics, because again, over time what you're interested in will change. But if you have a good base knowledge in a lot of categories, it gives you a lot of options down the line.
Dane, I find it really interesting that almost all of our guests always go back to the fact that you don't know as much as you think you know, and there's always so much more to learn. And I think to all of our listeners, that's one big takeaway you'll get from almost all of our podcasts, is there is so much out there that you think you know, but you really don't. And education is endless, and there's always new things, new studies, like you said, you can change. It's okay to grow and change. You can believe one thing, and after a few years, you educate yourself. It's okay to change, and it's okay to be wrong, and it's okay to make these mistakes, but growth requires that change. And I think it's really interesting seeing that across all of our guests that we've had.
Yeah, and I mean, look, I think as well, to Mark's point before, like a lot of trainers, like you mentioned Sebastian. I remember Sebastian and I used to work at the same gym for many years, and kind of before he was the strength coach, he was just the general pop coach. He was just training people. People see this end product. For me, I spent a good 5, 6, 7 years training just corporates before I got into bikini. For you, Mark, it was the first 8, 9 years. So I think that's a really good point in that 99% of the people that come into the fitness industry, or that we as coaches are dealing with, they're coming for fat loss, weight loss, whatever you want to call it, right?
Yeah.
So I think if you can master that as a fundamental of your career, if you're lucky enough and fortunate enough, and you mentioned before, for you, Mark, it was timing, like getting thrown into bikini, and by chance, it was the same for me. I didn't go out there intending to get into it. I was just able to get good results with average people, and then I was fortunate enough to have a bikini person who was like, oh, you know what, like you're able to do this with an average Joe, imagine what you could do with my physique, and give me an opportunity as well. Actually leads me into another question. You've done a lot of stuff in comp prep, right? There's a lot of comp prep coaches out there. You've had amazing results with that, but you yourself never competed, right? Now, this is another thing, because a lot of people are like, oh, well, I can't be a strength coach if I am not a world record powerlifter, or I can't train bikini athletes. You don't look like a bikini athlete. So like, what would be your advice, and what is your opinion on that too? Because obviously there's sometimes that stigma that, if you haven't, done it before yourself, like what are you, why are you doing that? Like what is your thought process on that?
Yeah, well, for example, I'm a big fan of like American sports, like NFL, college football, and stuff like that. And the best coaches, Bill Belichick, Patriots, Nick Saban from college and stuff like that. They were very, very average, I think high school football players, but they're the best coaches of all time. Um, not super athletic guys and stuff like that. And that's kind of is the same way I look at kind of coaching people, is that often the best athletes don't make the best coaches. A lot of the best athletes had the best genetics. A lot of things came very easy to them. For me, I've definitely never had the best genetics, and it's not about. I often think people with the best genetics and who are great athletes are at a disservice because so many things just came easy to them. It was just easy for them from a standpoint of, they could have responded extremely well to training, or they could also just. Some people are just mentally very good dieters, so they find dieting so easy. They can't comprehend someone else might struggle with nutrition. They think, well, I track my macros every single day, it's no issue. But then someone else, they can't comprehend why someone else can't stick to something, why they can't stick to low calories and stuff like that. So I think actually not having great genetics or having your own struggles, but still getting results is yourself is important as a coach, because it has made you need to work harder, dive into what is really optimal. So a lot of the times I put on posts on social media about, all right, this is what's optimal. You often see this, but this is what's most optimal with the science of biomechanics or whatever. And then people will be like, well, this bodybuilder didn't do that, and why should they? If they didn't do that, why are you saying it's optimal? And people struggle to understand that there's a difference between what a genetic freak does and what is actually optimal coaching to an everyday person. So for me, it's about understanding science, understanding biomechanics, understanding anatomy, understanding just humans in general, personality traits. None of that comes back to having to look a certain way yourself. So just your ability to look a certain way, I don't think necessarily correlates at all with being necessarily extremely educated or anything like that. I think, it can help in some regards, maybe, if you're a coach and you can help them with stage presence and posing and things like that. But when it comes down to it, most of the best coaches of all time were never the best bodies of all time, so to speak. So I definitely don't think it's a necessity. You should train it by all means, but, I don't think it's definitely, you have to look this way, you have to be this. You should be a coach who is hungry to get their clients' results, and I'm hungry to get their clients understand all the up-to-date research, science behind all the things you're trying to teach. That's much more important than how you look.
Yeah, I also think, your proof is in your clients too. You don't necessarily have to be, like Dane said, a bikini model, but you have proved that with a lot of your clients, and not just with the women in your bikini models, with your general population clients, with your male clients. I think a lot of that, especially once you have years of experience under your belt, your knowledge and your education is proof in your clients, and you don't necessarily have to embody that image of what you are portraying with your clients as well.
Yeah, I'd rather my clients look amazing than me look amazing. I'd rather my clients do well than me do well. They're not paying me to, often you say, oh, my coach was a pro and they won this show, but I didn't look that good. But, well, what your worth as a coach should be how your clients look, not how you look, to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So another question, obviously, you've built this big online community and profile, and we've touched base on it already today. One of the key things behind that has just been the education that you've done on yourself to be able to share that with others. I think one of the other things that has given you such a big following is that you've been very open. You're a very open person in general, very open book, but you've been very open about your mental health challenges. Like, talk to us about, obviously, here in Australia right now, we're in lockdown for goodness knows how long, in Sydney and Melbourne. Talk to us about kind of, the topic of mental health, kind of, how you deal with that on a day-to-day basis, but then also, maybe 2 or 3 Mark Carroll hacks that you've done and implemented within your life to kind of just, help you manage that side of things. Because I think, we all have down days and we all have different parts of our personality we have to manage. Like, a lot of people, I think, when they're struggling mentally, they let their entire life, crumble. You've still been able to grow your career, your relationships, your business, despite that. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's something for me. I've always had issues with since I was young, and then it's kind of just evolved over the years. It's always been it's quite hard, when you as a coach, especially if people don't quite understand when you're a coach and you're not feeling good, but then you have to go face to face with a client on the gym floor, for 5, 6, 7 sessions in a row and try to be their rock all the while you're not feeling the best. So it's always quite a hard thing, whereas, you might be in an office job and you can hide that a lot more easily, but, being a personal trainer is often quite hard to have mental health issues when people are paying you to really be the stability they need in their life. So it's definitely a hard thing, and that's why I often talk about what I do on social media, because it's just this, I hate this stigma where, a trainer basically has to be this superhuman person who never has down days and this always fake positive thing, and I don't find that too motivating personally, because it's just not really that real. But for me, it's one of those things. It's quite hard because when you're not feeling good, especially consistently, or you're up and down, it can be hard managing a business and dealing with people, especially face to face. So that's why I liked getting out of face-to-face coaching and stuff like that, because I often had to cancel a lot and things like that, and people don't realize they think you're just being lazy and stuff like that. So it was always a struggle for me, turning up to work when you're not feeling good. So I guess being online can allow you to manage that a lot better, or if you're not feeling the best, you can push off your emails for a few hours and then come back when you're feeling a bit better, which helps a lot. In terms of hacks or whatever, I think it's kind of firstly, it's kind of having real clear-cut goals, knowing kind of what you want to achieve and not just kind of hoping for the best, kind of like, trying to get a result with a client. So that can kind of hold you really accountable to why you're doing it, but also not getting too caught up in the pressure of having that goal. For example, like I might not have the best day and I might not work all morning until I feel better, but then I smash it when I actually feel better. And that's unfortunately something you can't do at face to face. You can't just cancel. So that's one of the things why I kind of like what I'm doing now, and I've gravitated towards more online. And I don't want to go lecture and stuff like that face to face. I'd rather, for me, put out content or create things that then I put the effort in, and then you can sell them ongoing. It doesn't rely on time for money, so to speak, which is something that's definitely helped me, because then it's not about not feeling good at that time when you're with someone, which is not what you want to do, obviously. So yeah, there's no magical, I guess, kind of hacks for anything really. It's as cliche as it kind of sounds, it's also about trying to actually work on yourself and get help. That's always, I think.
I think myself, that's a big one, because a lot of people, we were talking about this earlier on today, a lot of people, especially as men, afraid or ashamed to go and do that. I think that's a massive point. A lot of people, these days at least, though, are more likely to put their hand up than in the past. That's for sure.
And I think it's really awesome that you do so with such a big public platform. And, people look at you, especially coaches. I look at you as someone who's super successful. And knowing that someone who does look so successful and is successful still struggles with those things makes me feel, and I know all of your followers and listeners, it makes me feel like I'm not the only one that goes through periods of time like that, and it's real. And sometimes I feel like it affects people in a more positive way, knowing that they're not alone. And you may not think that sometimes, but at least and I can tell you, you have one person right here who's seen that and is like, all right, Maria, it's all right for you to feel the way you're feeling. You could take a step back and work on that for yourself and for your clients as well. And I think you're doing an awesome job doing that, especially for the community of men as well. And mental health is such a big thing in health in general. We can't avoid that. We can't ignore that. Physical health, looking good, you have to also be feeling good inside and out, and that comes with mental health. And knowing you have an entire community that supports you, what would be one thing that you wish your younger self knew, and one thing that maybe if you had the chance to look at your younger self and talk to him, what would you say to young Mark Carroll?
Jeez.
That's a loaded question there. Sorry.
Yeah. I guess maybe from a standpoint of like a work career, I definitely wish I had of. I was thinking about last night is that kind of I'm 32 now and where I'm at, and I often think, what if I had of not kind of just kind of gone through the motions for the first 6-7 years of my life, I could probably be where I am now 5, 6, 7 years ago, So I wish I had have definitely dived into my education a lot earlier, but I honestly just didn't know that it was out there. So I wish I had have been more exposed to, I guess, that education, or exposed to good coaches and exposed to more things out there, which again, I go back to why coaches are so fortunate these days, is that there's so much knowledge out there you see on social media. There wasn't social media when I first started as a PT. Didn't exist. So you couldn't. You would have to go to a bookshop to find most of these people. And it sounds like it was only 12, 14 years ago, but it's changed so much the world these days with education and stuff like that. So I wish I had have dived into everything a lot earlier in that regard. From an education standpoint, and then I probably wish I, just like most people, probably wish I had more confidence in what I could do earlier on. That's what kind of held me back from going to the gyms and stuff like that. I was very intimidated to go to a gym, so it kind of worked in synergy. I was in park fitness and stuff like that because it was kind of my safe place, not intimidating. So I wish, as most young coaches, you should kind of attack what kind of scares you, because, I obviously think I'm doing all right things these days, but I could have probably been doing all right things a fair few years ago, So the longer you take to get started, then eventually you can get there. But yeah, I could have probably saved a fair few years. So that's why I think
it's a good point. Like, I think between like the ages of 18 and 25, if you can really kind of get into it then and put the work in then, you can kind of come into your mid-20s and late 20s in the industry, especially these days. Like, to your point, like, we probably sound like we're harping on, but it's a lot easier today to build a successful business in the fitness industry. It just is. Social media has changed the game. Instagram in particular changed the game. I think, for trainers out there, like, that's what's actually, really admirable about you, Maria. Like, at only 22, like, you're out there, you're going for it, you're working, you're doing the courses, all this stuff that a lot of people at that age, and I'm sure Mark will attest to, they're more interested in going out, wasting their money on the weekends, doing all this stuff rather than investing into a book, or hiring a mentor, or doing some online coaching with a coach to kind of learn from them. Like, I think it's you definitely got the ability to fast track in today's industry.
Yeah, so it's a good thing these days, but it's then I guess you could also say it's also a very saturated industry these days as well. It definitely so there's pros and cons, that now it seems like everybody's a Instagram trainer these days, or selling an online program. If you go to the gym for a week, you're all of a sudden an online coach, so there is a lot of competition. But I always still believe these days, if you if you know your stuff and you put out good content, if you get great results, you'll rise to the top no matter what.
Yeah, and I think to this day, it's kind of shocking that although there is so much education out there, how little people actually know. Like for us, as you know, in the fitness industry, we know this stuff, and we think that we can assume that everybody understands it, and it's like a common thing. But to this day, people walk into the doors of my gym and they don't know anything about anything, nothing about lifting and nutrition. And I think even though the industry is so saturated, I think it's also saturated still with lots of misinformation and a lot of old school thinking. And I think that leaders like you and anybody who's getting educated nowadays with all the proper information out there is really setting the standard for like future generations of trainers, of not really doing all the flashy claims and sticking to the basics and the fundamentals and being real, hitting real results with real coaching and education. So I think that's awesome.
100%.
Yeah.
So, final question for you, mate. Obviously, unless our audience lives under a rock, they know where to find you. Coach Mark Carroll on Instagram, coachmarkcarroll.com on your website. What's in store for you and what you're doing within the industry over the next 12 months? I know from what I gather, you just, in the recent months, launched an app.
Yeah,
like
congratulations on that one.
What's going on with the Mark Carroll method heading into the back end of 2021?
I'm just trying to continually put out good products. I just have my challenges, and which are always kind of my biggest things. I do about 5 now a year, and then have my guidebooks, Bikini Body, and Glute Coach, and things like that. So just kind of continue on that. There's nothing too revolutionary that I do. It's just kind of trying to keep getting better and putting out better products. My brother and I been working on a course for a while for program design that we keep saying it's going to be out in 3 months' time, and that was every 6 months ago. So it's still a work in product. So that's something we're looking to kind of do for coaches. Don't ask me when that will be, because I originally said November, December last year. So that's coming eventually. And then just continually kind of just bettering my products, so nothing too interesting, just continually doing what I'm doing.
And actually, one more question. If there was one bit of advice you could give to trainers outside of the stuff that you've given today, what would that be?
I think, these days every trainer kind of wants to build a social media presence, and this is something I say all the time, and it's, if you kind of want to be taken seriously on social media, stop being an influencer and trying to sell every product under the sun, because it kind of dilutes what then you're selling. If you're trying to be a good coach and have a product and service, you should be promoting that a lot more than you are your activewear, your supplement line, you're sponsored by your 10% code on this and that and this and that. So my big thing for coaches is to really focus on trying to be clear cut with what you're trying to do in the industry. Like, who are you? What is your message? What are you trying to sell, as in yourself? And try to be marketing yourself over trying to sell everything else under the sun on your Instagram with a 10% discount code. So that's something I've never done in my life, other than, if you want to be taken seriously, really focus on just being, realize that you are your own brand, and make that your focal point over trying to be, working for someone else under every kind of avenue you can possibly get. I think that really helps build a relationship with your audience. So, and then the other thing would just be, to coincide with that, is really attack putting out great content. Do it daily. There's always someone out there. I know a lot of people doubt the knowledge they know, but there's always someone out there, who knows less than you. So start with what you know, put out that, and then keep upskilling and keep building up and building up. But if you really want to attract people and think, why should someone want to work with me, try to make it about, well, what can you do for them, rather than how I look or how strong I am. That should be your main focus point, is your page, and everything you put out, it should be, how can you deliver to help better their life, and then your message should be that throughout everything you do. So yeah, that's my push and my constant gripe, I think, on social media coaches who say they're not going well, and you look at their page and nothing reflects what they're actually trying to be about. So that's that's my message.
I love it. I think I'll definitely be taking that into consideration. And I think, honestly, at the end of the day, this is me just fangirling myself. I have used a lot of your guides myself and your educational videos that, like, clients that, before I even started being like a lot of clients with my in person and online. If someone asks me how to do something, just send them Mark Carroll's post. You gotta just send them that. It's clear, it's cut. And I think even joining, working with Clean Health and working with Dane and the team, really pushing me to provide education, because I had been sitting with so much knowledge and all of the courses that I took, and I think the minute that I pivoted towards I want to educate people so they understand that I'm more than just like just the look, and it's more than that. And I think that level of education, there will always be room for more of that, and I love seeing that, and the growth of that given social media is awesome, and your advice is spot on.
Awesome. Well, thank you for having me.
Thanks so much for joining. I'll leave you
That's
guys.
all right, mate.
That's a wrap.
Yeah,
Wrap it
that's
up.
a wrap.